National Prosecuting Authority will appeal the acquittal of controversial televangelist Timothy Omotoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Nzigiswa Sito. Now, the NPA says the decision follows thorough consultations with a team of prosecutors focusing on sexual offences. Last month, the Eastern Cape High Court in Gqeberha cleared Omotoso and his co-accused Lusanda Sulani and Nzigiswa Sito of all 32 rape and human trafficking charges after a trial spanning nearly 8 years. Let's get a little bit more on this story then. We're joined in studio by the national spokesperson then for the NPA, Advocate Mthunzi Mhaga, who joins us now then. Mthunzi, thank you so much for the time, Advocate. Let's talk about what brought this decision about. We're saying that it was after thorough consultation. Was it not with the same people who are ultimately part of this case? What brought about this decision?
Arabile's only one prosecutor was the lead prosecutor, yes, who took over the prosecution, who was part of the NPA internal team that studied the transcript that has over 2,000 pages and 3 judgments that were delivered by Honorable Judge Skuman. We also sought the opinion from a senior counsel, which we consider to be well considered and legally sound. After that, the NPA takes the view, firmly so, that there are reasonable prospects of success on appeal. There are 2 grounds, briefly, that we are basing the appeal on. That we firmly believe that the Honorable Judge misdirected herself on the law, and that there was not sufficient evaluation of the evidence presented by the state in respect of each state witness. Obviously, Arabile, I will be constrained in criticizing the judge in a platform like the media, because we have a legal avenue to explore which is the appeal. I need to also mention that in respect of an appeal of this nature, where the state is aggrieved by an acquittal judgment, we can only appeal it by requesting the judge to reserve a question of law as opposed to fact, unlike an ordinary accused person who appeals a conviction judgment. So in terms of Section 319 of the Criminal Procedure Act, we have to do that. But before we do that, we need to then seek clarity on factual findings that have been made by the judge in order to craft and finalize those questions of law, which we've done yesterday, 12th of May 2025, by submitting same to the Registrar of the High Court in Gqeberha.
You've touched on quite a few aspects, and I'm actually trying to unpack a few of them as we can in each moment. 2, you speak about confidence in a reasonable prospect of a successful appeal here. Does that relay your confidence in being able to actually get a judgment that would perhaps put away Timothy Omotoso and his 2 accused, or at least find them guilty of some of the charges? Is that then you saying you believe that there actually should be criminal charges that should allow them to be put in jail of some sort?
On a thorough assessment of the transcript of a trial, which you'll remember ran over 7 years, and a thorough assessment of the 3 judgments that were delivered by the Honorable Judge, our team, as well as the senior counsel, concluded that we can meticulously argue in the Supreme Court of Appeal, because the questions of law will be ventilated at that appeal court, for a setting aside of that judgment to get them to be found guilty.
Does that then also mean that you right now only have an intent to appeal? Understand why I'm asking this, because your first step, as you've done yesterday, as you just made note of, is to request the judge for a clarity of factual findings. Then once you have those findings, you can then put forward your appeal officially, because you would have collated all the information. Is that correct?
Thank you for that clarity. What is important is that there's ample case law where the Supreme Court of Appeal says, when you are going to craft the reservation of the question of law, it's very important that you know the factual findings so that you don't misconstrue them to be questions of law. And therefore, the starting point would have been to say, when we look at the judgment, it is not glaring and it is not clear where the factual findings are. So we're saying, Honorable Judge, please furnish us with a clarity on the factual findings. Then we will finalize, because we have provisional questions of law that counsel has crafted, after which we will then submit them to the judge. But we're hoping that he will do so expeditiously, because in terms of Section 319, fortunately, there's no time frame within which we have to submit those questions of law, as long as you do so within a reasonable time so that you avoid any undue delay.
Okay. Explain to us the process, if you will, from here then, if you will, Mthunzi. Just, you appeal this case. It's ultimately an appeal against the judgment, not necessarily Timothy Omotoso and the two co-accused as yet. If you're then found to have a case in that regard and your appeal is successful, then does that open up the charges again, and then those two could possibly charged and face a different trial? Is that the process?
No. In an appeal, the order that the court, Supreme Court of Appeal, will grant, if they are with us, they will overturn the acquittal, and then he will be found guilty, because the court will be saying, on the strength of what the state has presented to us now and what they presented during trial, he should have been found guilty. It is not a situation where there will be a retrial, say, plead again. We recall those witnesses and present evidence afresh.
Because one would imagine that that would be the time consumption that people are trying to avoid as well here. All right. You also still have your internal investigation then, right, that you're still conducting here, according to the statement. You
recall, Arabile, that at some stage when the judgment was delivered, which we consider to be devastating in the fight against gender-based violence and in the fight to ensure proper administration of justice, contents of that judgment reflect adverse findings of unethical conduct and ineptitude on the part of the prosecution team, all of them. So a national director assembled a team to say, let's now conduct a thorough investigation of the conduct of these prosecutors. If we agree with the judge, disciplinary actions will be taken against them. We're expecting 2 reports, one end of May, one end of June. I must then say, Arabile, that I understand the frustration and the outcry as a result of this acquittal judgment. But it is an isolated incident, because remember last week, 2 cases, successful prosecution in the Jocelyn Smith case, where 2 of our bright prosecutors ensured a conviction where the victim was not found in trafficking in persons, for exploitation and kidnapping. And secondly, let me just expand. In the Eastern Cape, a police officer, Tembekile Gqeku, was convicted and sentenced to 20 years. You know what he did? He raped a victim of domestic violence who had sought help from the police officers inside a police station. When she came out after the ordeal, the police officers on duty laughed at her and said she was on track and couldn't help her. As a result, the case was withdrawn, but later reinstated when our colleagues reached out to IPID and assisted her to get the matter re-enrolled.
But you can imagine...
This is an indication of the prosecutorial prowess, the prosecutorial capacity that we have. And I can tell you that our Tutuzela care centers, which supports victim services, which are 66 countrywide, have an impressive conviction rate of 77%.
Mthunzi, one can imagine, however, the high-profile nature of this one being the key reason why there would be such an outcry as well. You have these 2 reports, as you make note of, plus you've said that you've appointed additional officials to assist in the investigation to its extended scope. How wide are we making this team ultimately now, and who will it consist of, if you're able to share?
We will not shy away from conceding, Arabile, that our prosecutorial capacity was put under spotlight there. We are therefore saying this investigation must be widened enough to say, apart from whether these prosecutors have the necessary skills to prosecute this kind of cases, as demonstrated in the adverse findings, do we as the NPA have adequate measures to support them in ensuring that we successfully and aggressively prosecute gender-based violence?
So, further strengthening of the NPA as a whole, do you think that's necessary, continuing or taking this into effect? As you said, it was damning, it was a legal defeat that was not something you would have wanted then as the NPA. Should there be a further strengthening?
There needs to be. Let me make an example. You are good at what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I also think I'm good at what I do.
Yes.
Until I get maybe exposed for a setback.
100%, yeah.
And then I need to concede and say, maybe I need strengthening, which is what the national director has said this team must do. Look at the weaknesses and the strength. Of course, applaud them on the strength, but on the weaknesses, strengthen them and make sure that the fight against gender-based violence is strengthened and we're aggressive in so doing.
Yeah. So can then you say to the public outright right now that this case will continue to be fought with the same aggression, with the same vigor, because that is what people will be wanting right now, because they've wanted answers for some time?
Fortunately, the team that we assembled that considered the judgment is made up of experienced deputy directors of public prosecutions who made or submitted a memorandum of advice. Now, when we go to the appeal, it will be led by a senior counsel and a junior, experienced in this kind of matters.
Yes.
Supported by one or two of our prosecutors, but they will not be leading and actively involved.
So
but
18.
it will be us skilling with the senior counsel who will be leading our appeal process.
So we bring on the A-team, basically, for this case now.
We can take chances.
Mthunzi, thank you so much for the time.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming into studio as well, for clarifying this one, because it's certainly a very significant and prominent case then in the country. Then Advocate Mthunzi Mhaga is the National Prosecuting Authority's national spokesperson. They're joining us as the NPA is set to appeal the Timothy Omotoso judgment then as well. Thank you so much.